My name is Jeannine Hedberg, and I am a licensed Unity teacher here at Unity of Naples. And I'm part of our spiritual leadership team. There's 4 of us. We're led by Reverend Carla, Reverend Denise, Reverend Eileen, and I'm a licensed Unity teacher. So the 4 of us are going to be sharing Michael Singer's really lovely book. We've got several copies over on Higher Grounds if you want to buy one. There is an audio book I know you can get. So it's just a wonderful book. And again, Michael Singer is not a Unity author, but his teachings really dovetail in with what we believe, what we teach, and what we love to do. So again, Michael Singer, absolutely wonderful book. He lives here in Florida, by the way. He has a meditation center. I know a lot of you have been to it. It's northern west side. But Michael Singer, a Florida resident, and really a lovely, lovely book. Now, as Gary said, what about that voice? Is that voice you? The voice that's always talking in your head, is that you? Is that who you are? Is that who I am? And I really thought that was the case all my life. And it's really taken since I came to Unity to start to discover that that's not really the truth. This voice that goes on in my head, what are you going to have for dinner? You know you don't like chicken. You were going to go to that place and have that chicken special. And then you saw that red car. And remember, you always wanted a red car. And then, your boyfriend, your old boyfriend that you don't like, had a red car. Maybe a red car is not the right thing. Constantly going on in your head. And Michael Singer, as do many spiritual authors, say that the first step towards living a spiritual life, living a spiritually conscious life, is to be able to not listen to that voice as much as we normally do. And so that's really what today is about. As Gary said this morning, in Unity we really don't have rules, but we have a lot of tools that we like to share. And so I've got a really fun tool coming out of Michael Singer's book today to share with you. But the key, I think, is that the voice has a purpose. You know how sometimes in meditation they'll say, oh, just cut out the monkey mind, don't listen to it, just shove it out, things like that. But I really think that voice is a part of me. And it's a part of me, and I really think it's one of my angels. Because what it does is it narrates my world. There's that dog, there's that restaurant you wanted to go to, but you need somebody to go with you. You don't want to eat alone today, do you? That voice narrates my world, and its purpose is to keep me safe. But it keeps me safe within the parameters that it's learned in my whole life. So if I don't like red, the color, it's going to steer me away from red things. Maybe there's a red door to a lovely restaurant that you want to go to, but it's probably not very good because you don't like red. Well, that makes absolutely no sense. But it looks at the cues, the clues from your past, from my past, and steers me in directions that keep me as safe as possible. And so as we go through Michael Singer's book, which is just so much fun, you're going to love it, we learn that the voice is an important part of who and what we are. But it's the level of attention we give to that voice that's critical. So what I'd like to do today is really talk about we need to learn to step back. And there's a technique that I'll share with you to step back and realize that we are not the voice in our head. We are something more than that. And the voice is a part of our life, a part of who we are, but we are not that. Now, basically, one of the things that Michael Singer says is that we use this voice to recreate the world as we see it. And then we live in our mind inside of ourselves instead of living in the world. And so that is really the division we're working to make here, that we no longer want to live in our mind being afraid of something or leaning towards a certain direction when the world is out there for us to discover. And so having a filter, this is really a filter in our lives, put there, I think, to protect us ultimately, but it's a filter that I don't think we have to listen to all the time. And I'd like to share with you how we can fix that. Now, Michael Singer talks about that this is the first step in growth spiritually, conscious growth spiritually. And the consciousness we're talking about here is not, oh, I'm unconscious in the hospital and I'm conscious if I'm not in the hospital. That's not the consciousness we're talking about. It's not. There is a level of spiritual consciousness. And it's the spiritual consciousness, the consciousness of God, the consciousness of our soul that we are working to discover and working to live within and to create heaven on earth as we do that. So I'm going to just jump into this. This is my favorite thing. I'm going to need some props for this. But Michael Singer says that we should really look at this voice as our roommate. So I don't know about you, but I've had several roommates in my life. Most of them have been really wonderful, but there's been, a couple that, might not have been perfect. So what he's saying is, look at this voice as if it's your roommate. And I'm going to need some props for this, so hold on. All right. 2 props. Okay. So we got 1 prop here, and we got 1 prop here. So the key that Michael Singer teaches is that we look at our roommate, the voice in our head as our roommate, but the best way to start to differentiate who and what we truly are from the voice is to start to set it outside of ourselves. And the best way to do that is to personify it. Now, I know in Unity we try and not personify God. This is an aspect of God, but we're going to personify the voice in your head. And as I thought about it, I'm like, well, what does my voice look like? What does it sound like? Does she wear perfume? I mean, all the really important things. And so I wanted to share with you my vision of my roommate. Oh, she's going to be up there in just a second. For those of you who don't know who this is Iris Apfel. She's a model, a Manhattan model and socialite. She had her 102nd birthday last week. So she still lives. She is still a fashion maven in Manhattan. She started a cosmetic company in her 90s. But this is my vision of who I see sitting here. And if I can take that voice and just kind of ask them to sit here next to me and talk, do what they're here to do. Just let them talk, let them be, let them wander around wherever they want to wander. And I call her Angie. Sandra will understand this. She's one of my angels. I didn't really want to call her Angel, but she's Angie. She's Angie. And so when Angie can sit out here and do what Angie does best, narrate my world, you know what that leaves me free to do? It leaves me free to step in back of that voice. I can step in back of that voice, and I can listen to the voice, but not get drawn into what they're saying, not get drawn into the problems or the conversations. I can step back here and ask myself the question, who am I? Who really am I? If I'm not that voice, I am the one who hears that voice. As I step away and I see Angie sitting there, I am the one that sees, in a way, that voice. And it allows me to just take a step every few days, a little bit farther away. She's still there. She's still protecting me. She's still really one of my angels. But what leaves me free to do is to come over here. And I come over here, and I sit in the seat of my soul. I sit in the hands of God, in my heart space. And this is where I hear messages from God. Angie's still talking. Angie's still doing what she does best. But the more time that I can spend sitting in this seat, it allows me to get the ideas from God, to hear that still, small voice. And that really is the first step in developing spiritual consciousness, so that we no longer look to solve our challenges in life from a worldly perspective. We're going to go rearrange some things out there. I'm going to move. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to meet some new guy. We're not going to rearrange the pieces of life. What we're going to do is we're going to listen to the still small voice as we sit here with God and get direction, get an idea, get a presence, feel the love in the silence. And a lot of Michael Singer's work has a Buddhist philosophy. He's also a yoga teacher. And so the yogic tradition speaks a lot about this separation of this voice from living as an aspect of God. And yoga teaches a lot of these kinds of techniques. But this one is especially strong to make that first step away. Now, once you make that first step away, and you're sitting over here in the hands of God, however you look at that, however you see that, whatever that room looks like, this is the upper room that Jesus spoke about. This is the inner chamber that's spoken about often. And in this place, we listen for that still small voice. And I'm like, well, what does a still small voice sound like? I'm like, I don't know. And one of our founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, founded Unity. And we never really think of Charles as a poet. But Charles has some wonderful writings about what happens over here in this seat. And I just wanted to share them with you because this is not new news. Many people have written about this. But Charles is especially eloquent about what he hears. And this is from his book, Jesus Christ Heals. It was written about 80 years ago. And he says, if you ask me about the language I use in communicating with God, I am not able to tell you. Because you are talking from the standpoint of using words to convey ideas, while in the language of God, ideas are the vehicles for communication. And compared with audible language, communion in the mind can be said to be without sound. It is the still small voice, but it is the voice that is not a voice, the voice using words that are not words. Yet its language is more definite and certain than words and sounds because it has none of words and sounds limitations. So I think Charles describes really well what happens as we spend more and more time here. And the easiest way to get over here is in meditation. And so I really want to challenge you to take time every day, morning, afternoon, evening, a couple times a day. Sit in the silence and don't try and squelch this voice, but just step aside from the voice. Come sit over here where you really sit in the hands of God. And this is where we'll start to develop more of a spiritual perspective, more direction for our lives from a spiritual perspective. And you can picture this chair any way you like. I think this one's absolutely gorgeous. But this is where we want to spend 100% of our time. And if we can only do 1% today, it's the growth to be able to spend 100% of our time here so that all of our decisions come from this space and not from this place of fear. Now, there's one more trick here, and that's what do you do when this voice gets really loud? If something's going on in your life and all of a sudden you get pulled back over here. And what can happen is that you can end up here for an hour, you can end up here for a day, you can end up here for a month, or you could end up here for years. You could get pulled back in. And so the discipline is to remember that where we want to live is over there. And we will be able to still listen, but not get drawn in. Michael Singer calls it where we put our focus. Do we focus on these challenges? As Gary said, this person, my Angie, only sees problems in the world, problems that she's going to protect me from. But God doesn't see problems. God sees perfection. And how do we listen for those ideas from God so we can express that? And it has to do with focus and really making a disciplined way to spend as much time as we can here, sitting in the arms of God, and not here. So again, Angie's a part of my life. She's not going anywhere. Trust me. I'm still working on this. I'm still working on spending as much time as I can knowing my perfection, knowing my Christedness, and seeing that in every person that I interact with. And it's a path. It's a direction. It is not snap my fingers and it's done. I wish it were like that. My first spiritual teacher, I thought, I learned that. He says, well, you're going to need to learn it again tomorrow. I'm like, really? I didn't know that. I have to learn it again tomorrow? And the next day, and the next day, and the next day.